Well, thank you for joining us today for our story crafting. This is the second segment in our Discover Your Story workshop series. We're going to be talking about how to effectively share your story and create meaningful relationships with your prospective members to be able to grow your membership. So we're going to go ahead and get started. Today, we're going to talk about the power of storytelling, talking about identifying pain points and how to really hone in on that in terms of catering your message to that prospective member, sharing your ABWA journey, solving problems that people have with ABWA as the solution, talking about what's in it for me, for your prospective members, relating to that potential client or customer, which in this case is our ABWA member, and closing the deal or closing the membership for that particular person. So while this is focused on ABWA, the things that we're going to talk about can be relevant to any sales proposition. So if you have a business, if you work for a business and closing sales or closing client relationships as part of that, you can utilize all of the nuggets that we're going to talk about today in that particular venue. That being said, I am going to encourage you to share and speak up and collaborate with us today to make it interactive. So the first thing we want to talk about is delving into why storytelling is so influential and how it can shape connections. When someone's telling a story, it creates an emotional impact. If you think about when you get hooked into a story or a movie, you get that emotional connection with the character or the person telling the story. You can either relate to them or relate to the characters and what's happening. There's some sort of emotional tie to the story. So in the case of telling stories yourself, later we're going to talk about how you determine which stories to share and the connection between storytelling and building that relationship. Because once you get them hooked into your story and they connect with something that you said or resonates with you, that's where you're able to build a relationship and a rapport, and it makes the close so much easier. Before I move on to the next slide, I want to share with you a story that I sometimes share, and I think I might talk about it a little bit more when we get to the pain points, but creating that relatability. And one of the things that I emphasize with people when I'm talking about ABWA is the sisterhood. And so something I share is when I had to drop everything when my sister went into the hospital with her cystic fibrosis, and I had to leave the very next day on a plane. I was able to call my ABWA sisters to take care of things and look after things at home, like my dogs and my house, so that I could focus on what was important. And it's that sisterhood piece that makes ABWA more than just a membership. It's lifelong friendships. So we'll talk more about that, but that was an example. So the first thing we want to do is identify pain points for the person that we're talking with. Initially, and what we talked about yesterday, was that elevator pitch, where you met someone, you made a connection, and you said something of interest to be able to stimulate a follow-up meeting, whether it's a coffee or a lunch. Those are typically, or a happy hour, however you want to meet up with someone. Sometimes I do Zooms. And this is where you're going to get to know them better. So in this process, it's important to be a good listener and ask lots of follow-up questions to get to know your target audience, the person that you're talking to, and what they need and want, and what's missing out of their career and personal life. Because if you can identify that piece, then we link it with something in ABWA as the solution. But in order to do that, and in order to guide the conversation so that you're not talking about so many different things that they don't care about, we want to focus in on what specifically is important to them. So we want to recognize problems or challenges that they have in their workplace or career. So what might be some questions that you could ask during this conversational fact-finding stage to help identify pain points?
This actually happened to me yesterday or the day before yesterday. I
Yes.
was with someone who's designing a business, and she's doing amazing stuff, but I don't understand what she's doing. So what I asked her was, what is your big vision of this? Where are you wanting to take this? Because I see her doing all the influencer stuff and creating and bringing in members and stuff, but I don't understand, where are you taking this? What is your bigger vision of this? And then by asking that, I got some surprising answers that changed our relationship dynamically and changed how my perceptions were of what she was attempting. So asking, I would say asking non-yes and no questions. They need to be open-ended questions that really elicit them to expose something personal about themselves, but not personal about themselves. You know what I mean? Something about what their dreams are. Where do you, like somebody in a business, where do you want to go? Where do you see your business in 10 years?
I
What are
love
you
that
trying to
question.
build? What are you trying to build? What is your dream of where you're going? What are you trying to build? And then on the other side, once you get into that and listen, you can also say, what are some of the things you're stumbling on? What are some of the challenges? Now, I don't like stumbling. Challenges. You want to keep it positive, but what are some of the challenges you're seeing right now? So if you kind of ask open-ended questions and then listen, it elicits them to revealing stuff. But listening is a talent of its own. And the more you do it, the better you get at it.
Yes, I love all those questions that you gave, Kim. Certainly we do want to ask those open-ended questions and keep it positive. And sometimes follow-up questions will come about. You could ask them to tell you more about their job, to understand what their career path has been and what their role is in the organization. That ties into Kim's question that she mentioned about, where do you see yourself in 5 to 10 years? And then a follow-up question to that could also be, what do you need to get you to that goal? Have you thought about the different steps you have to take? So we're finding out more about them, and we're asking a lot of questions, and we're not really talking much. Sometimes at this point, we can share some personal or relatable anecdotes to help them show that you understand kind of where they're at, but you don't want to be talking a lot. So an example might be if someone says, oh, I've worked with this company and I've got promoted a couple times and I've moved in a lot of different parts of the country. So I'm not really involved in any groups or community stuff right now. I would say, really, that's so interesting. I've been in the same place that you've been in. My husband was military and we moved all over the country for 23 years in like 6 different locations. And ABWA is one of those things that helped me get connected in my community and find friends and things to do once I got plugged in that new place. So you can add little interjections to help them know and make those connections, that you understand where they're coming from. In sales, they typically call that the feel, felt, found method. I know how you feel. I felt the same way too. I found that, and you don't have to necessarily use the words feel, felt, found, but if you think about that as a quick way to respond, it helps establish that rapport. So then we want to tailor the approach. This is customizing your message to fit your audience. And this is really important. As we've gathered information about our audience, let's say you're talking to someone who is newly retired and you are talking to them as a prospective member. Well, the things that you talk about from your story are going to be vastly different than if you're talking to a young professional who is just getting started in their career, because their needs are totally different. So the retired professional might be interested in mentoring other women, might be interested in community service opportunities, might be interested in the socialization piece. And you'll find this out when you're talking to them through that first step, through identifying their pain points about what they're missing, what they're doing right now in their life and their career. Now, the millennial, the things that they might want could be to get a mentor or possibly mentor other people on things that they're really savvy about. They might want career advancement, so they might want to obtain skills or leadership opportunities. But again, we don't know where to take the conversation unless we ask good questions up front. Once we have those questions, we can decide what we're going to focus our conversation, because you don't want to necessarily overwhelm and talk about things that they don't care about. Focus your conversation on their needs and the benefit of our membership that matches up with the needs. There are things in our membership that don't need to be addressed here. We're only trying to attract them and pull them into membership with ABWA. So the things that aren't relevant to them, we don't need to talk about. That just makes the conversation diluted, and it can be confusing about what the value is for them, but it can also elongate the conversation, make it much more lengthy than necessary. So some of the things that we want to know, we want to make sure we do is we've asked questions about the audience. Now we're adapting our message and our style to their approach. So if they come across very, they talk about their feelings a lot when you're describing, answering your questions, you will want to incorporate feelings into your response and your approach. So, for example, if recognition is really important and they're really disappointed because they've worked at their job for 20 years and they never get recognized for anything that they do, and the place would fall apart without them. You could approach recognition with ABWA as the answer to that problem. And because they said that they were disappointed, you could tie in emotions. I was so honored and blessed to be able to be recognized as one of the top 10 businesswomen in ABWA in 2016. And to be able to walk across the stage and hear the applause of all the women in the room just made my heart happy. So you can approach it from that perspective. But if the person seems more analytical, the approach might look a little bit different. Same situation, they don't get recognized at work, and they were a top performer. They're in the top 10% of the sales people in their group on a regular basis, and they've been with the company 25 years. They're using numbers and analytics. You could point out in terms of the top 10 that it's a very small so you have a person with an analytical mind, same situation. They don't get recognized at work, and they're typically in the top 10% of the salespeople, and they've worked with the company for 15 years, and other people are not top performers and are getting recognized. You can still talk about the recognition piece, but it will look different. So you might say, after being honored with top 10, which is only the top 10 women in ABWA in the entire country, I saw an increase in my business referrals by 20% from all the positive PR. So you're talking about the same ABWA area of the mission statement. However, the approach that you use is a little bit different. So you're going to talk kind of like them. Does that make sense? This can also go, if you're a skilled communicator, you can also mimic some of the expressions or the way that the person is talking to you. So I tend to use my hands a lot and I'm animated. But if you're talking to someone that's very relaxed, you need to take a different approach because you want them to connect with you. So if they're talking softly and a little bit more slowly, you can transfer into that persona to relate to them better. Yes, Kim, that's mirroring. Exactly. Okay. So in terms of sharing your ABWA journey, you found out about the person, and we're going to tailor our approach and the things we talk about from our journey with the individual. So the way we want to introduce this, we all as ABWA members have unique journeys to share. So we want to figure out what experiences that we want to highlight in our journey. So we all have different experiences. So everyone's story is going to be different, even though we're talking about the same organization, the same association, and the same 4 tenets in the mission statement. So we want to emphasize turning points in your specific experience, lessons learned, and personal growth. So this is a good point for you to maybe take out a piece of paper and think about experiences that you've had in ABWA and how it has impacted you. So the longer you're a member and the more active you are with your membership, you may have more experiences that you could put on your page. And I'll just give you some examples of ones that come to mind for me. My first regional conference was in Hawaii. I went totally because I love to travel. And I was like, yes, the conference is in Hawaii. Sign me up. And I never looked back after that, honestly. It was an amazing experience. The governor of Hawaii, who was a woman at the time, was at the conference, which really made an impression on me. And I had maybe 5 or 6 women from my league all go together. We got 2 rooms. We stayed longer. We did all this tourism activities like snorkeling and hiking and going to luau's. And one of the other things that sticks out about this particular trip is that the national president at the time invited some of us who stayed later to come to her room for a private hula lesson. So I could potentially use parts of that story as an example. If there's someone that maybe talks about having adventure and wants to travel, or if they are talking about friendships and connecting, that person would really appeal to that particular story. I already shared my story about my sister. I have another story that sometimes I share. I'm a foster and adoptive parent, and at one point I was scheduled to speak at an ABWA event out of state. And that week, just a few days before the event, I found out we were getting placed with 3 foster kids. And my ABWA sisters rallied. They got me babysitters at the hotel for the event. One of them drove with me and helped with the kids. Another one met us in California because I was picking up a new car because my car didn't fit all the car seats that I needed now. And so it was really a group effort, and they came together to really help support me in many ways there. So those are just a couple examples from my personal journey. And there may be other things, like I could look back at my reflect on my service as a National Board of Directors member this year and add about the leadership skills that I've gotten to work on as an entrepreneur. I'm a party of one over here, and it's always me, myself, and I don't have to communicate and check with other people. I don't have to interact. And being on the board really helped me in giving me that filling in the gap of being able to work on a team. And that's something that I miss out on when you're working by yourself and you're not having to communicate with other people. So that was one of the biggest things for me as a entrepreneur. Does anyone have any personal pieces of something that stands out in your ABWA journey?
You want to go, Christina, or shall I?
Wow, we putting my business on Front Street. For the sake of the recording. Okay, let's do it. So when I came into ABWA was, well, we talked about this yesterday. The American Business Women Association was not on my radar whatsoever. And a friend of mine came into ABWA, was invited by another member to help them with the website. She was very shy, so she brought me along to be a kind of a support system. And to make a long story short, I heard there was only 3 times that you can come to the meeting. I'm a shy introvert, so I came in, sat in the furthest back corner I could possibly find, and tried to hide and make myself as minimal as possible. And did the 3 times, told my friend, hey, go in there, have a nice meeting. I'll see you when you come out. And I was enjoying the sunshine, and a fellow member, Carol Nagel, since it's being recorded, I'm putting you out here, told me, hey, why are you in the meeting? And I said, well, you said 3 times and then I can't come into the meeting, but you have a lovely meeting. You have a great one. It's going to be awesome. And she said, girl, quit playing. Come on up in here. And the next thing I know, I'm in there and my friend's killing herself laughing. And I had a group of young women that were asking me questions on what I did. And that's really my start into ABWA. I came up with every excuse possible not to be a member. But after I really hung out with the young ladies, it was evident that it was something not only that I needed, but it was something that I could actually enjoy. And there's nothing like joining a group where you can actually have fun and learn at the same time. The second story that Kim is alluding to is I was a member without a vehicle. And so I had other members that would actually come and pick me up from my house and drive me to the meetings. And at that time, it was probably a 35-40 minute drive. So that speaks to their willingness to assist me. Kim came into the organization and she found out that I didn't have a vehicle. And she said, hey, why don't we do something about this? and then, kind of orchestrated change. And so they went on this grand mission that I didn't know about to look for me a car. They found said car, and she was asking me for information, and I was just giving my information, all willing and free. We're talking about driver's license and all this extra stuff. And for some reason, I trusted her. And so I gave her all that information, and she picked me up, and I arrived at a fellow ABWA member's business. She had a car auto repair place. Somebody left their car there. They didn't want to repair it. They got enough money to repair the car for me and said, "Hey, this is your vehicle." And I am a very, very private person. And so I had to walk around the corner to catch myself to make sure I wasn't crying like the ugly cry. The single tear cry is really cute, and everything. But, the ugly cry, you don't want to show that one all willy nilly. And so, got myself together, but they really banded together. I'm doing the short version. To provide me with something that I still drive to this very day. It's a he. His name is Black Panther. Uh, and so it has afforded me the ability to earn money. It's afforded me the ability to gain other information and travel and the whole nine, just because of that group of people.
So I love both of those stories. The first story speaks specifically to someone who, you don't have to be an extrovert to be a member of the association, that introverts can love it too. And so sometimes you're going to get that when you're talking to a potential member, they're going to say, "Oh, well, I'm an introvert. I don't really do these group things, and I don't join clubs. I'm fine with just hanging out by myself." And something like Christina's story was a great tie-in to, well, I felt the same way and I tried to get out of it and they just sucked me in, and I found out that it's a lot of fun and I've grown a lot. So I love that story for that reason. And the second story really calls again kind of to the sisterhood and the people that really support you and have your back in ABWA. I have picked up members for meetings as well. Recently we had a member that has cancer and hasn't been driving, gets fatigued very easily. And so I've shuttled them to meeting. And I'm happy to do that. Kim, do you want to share something from your personal journey?
Well, I'll just say with a caveat that Christy and I have so many stories since we met that I did not know she was going to tell that story, but I'm glad she is, because she is very private and I've always left that story. Well, sometimes left that story for her to tell. Mine was actually coming from New York. Some pretty life-changing, not good things happened to me there. I came down to Texas. I met some people who invited me to a meeting, and basically for me and what had happened in my life, I just needed to get out of bed and get out of the house. I needed to be alive again. And so I went to this meeting and I was like, okay, this is kind of good. This is kind of fun. This is kind of cool. And then two people there invited me to another meeting. And I went to that meeting. And one of the first people I met that I connected with was Miss Christina Hackett. And I can say we've been on a journey. We are best friends. We started a business together. It has been a lot of life stuff, and we grow a lot together. It's like having someone, and also other people in there. You're with leaders that you work with and you grow together. And what I can say is that who I was in 2017, in March of 2017, when I first walked into a meeting, February of 2017, to who I am now is transformational, not from anything specific, but just from the nature of the culture, from what is offered, from the encouragement. The biggest thing was encouraging to challenge myself to go beyond my expectations. We tend to get into groups and look over there and go, oh, I can't be her, and I can't be her, and I can't be her. The only thing we are always trying to do in ABWA, it is a safe space to become the best version of yourself. And everything in the culture evolves in order to do that. And I would say that is what's kept me there, and that is what keeps me passionate about passing it forward and even making us stronger and creating stronger leaders. So my story has more little intricate stuff, but Christina did so well telling a lot of like our combined story. I think that encompasses it. But again, the more you challenge, what kind of like Christina said, doesn't matter whether you're introvert, extrovert, what it does is when the more you press out against the walls to become a bigger, better version of yourself in whatever comfortable way you can do it, the more rewards you can have. Now you can be like Kella and I and be kamikaze, or you can be Christina, who's like a steady, solid, I'm going this way through the storm. But there's always growth out of the journey.
So I love some of the points that you touched on. The safe space that will resonate with a lot of people because you have the opportunity to grow and take risks without any real impact of the risk. So if you experiment at work and it doesn't go well, you could lose clients or customers. You could lose your job. You try new things in ABWA and it doesn't work out. Well, let's try something else. So it's an opportunity for you to make yourself vulnerable and get a little bit uncomfortable without any real high risk involved in that opportunity. So the other piece, the other story piece that I could tie into is from an educational perspective. So if you've ever gotten money for business skills tuition reimbursement, or the league has paid for conference, or you've gotten any kind of scholarship or outright grant, you can tie that into your story. And I actually joined ABWA because I was on the computer looking for scholarships for my master's degree program, and ABWA came up and it was in my local area and I joined right away. I didn't get a scholarship right away, but I did get a scholarship towards my education, which I really appreciated. And now as a board member and a trustee for the foundation, I get to help evaluate and empower other women through the awarding of scholarships. So that's like full circle for me in terms of that. So I think it's important when you're sharing your journey, you have to be willing to get vulnerable, because that will help kind of bring down the barrier between you and the person that you're talking to about the experience. And sharing your challenges and overcoming those challenges leading to success can really create a deeper connection and help facilitate the close that's coming later. So once you have some of your experiences in ABWA just kind of jotted down on a piece of paper, you can start to think about how you can plug those into identifying certain needs that women have of things that they're missing in the workplace. So what are some common challenges women have in the workplace?
Balance.
Promotion.
Oh, go ahead.
I would say promotion. A lot of
Promotion.
women, don't know how to articulate how great they are or how excellent they are, because it's uncomfortable. And number two, it is not considered being humble. So being able to learn that trait. Kim?
Yes. And so as an HR professional, one of the things, one of the statistics out there is that um, women do get promoted more slowly, and they actually get paid less. And if you're a woman in a minority group, whether you're a woman of color or disabled, you have even less pay.
Age.
Yes, age and any kind of differentiating factor impacts your pay. And in terms of promotion, men statistically, even if they don't meet all of the qualifications for a job, they'll apply anyways. So they're getting promoted more quickly because they're putting themselves out there. And women will look at the job description, and if they don't meet all the criteria, they're gonna be like, I don't qualify. Whereas the man will submit their application. Kim, what other challenges?
I also think social constructs. We still are in a society that balancing women at work and women managing a life outside of work is very demanding. And so sometimes we see that we have to do an either or as opposed to an all and. I don't know if that makes sense, but we tend to use some of the social constructs of where we should be, what our roles should be, what we're doing. And even though if we're trying to break through them, it's still inherent in our culture. And it's also inherent in the workplace. It is still a common thing that if a business knows that you have a very active home life as a woman, it's going to impede you for advancement in that culture. So some of the social constructs can be an effect. And in a sense, I know women who have had to kind of hide certain things and diminish certain things in order to progress. At the same time, I think there's a lot of psychological pressure for us that others don't have to deal with, of being that superwoman. And I've got to bring home the bacon, fry it up in a pan, work full time, raise the kids, and take off his shoes and rub his feet at night, which is a different world that we're at. And even though we're not in that world anymore, it is still a construct of our culture of balancing who we desire to be in a full sense, if that makes sense. So there's a lot of things a lot of pressures we put on ourselves. Now, not everybody will have that experience, but we will put a lot of pressures on ourselves based on the different roles we think we need to take on and whether they limit us or empower us.
Absolutely. That work-life balance piece is a factor for many women. And when we say work-life balance, it doesn't even necessarily have to be, it might be spouse, it might be single parent, it might be taking care of aging parents, and all of these different elements that demand our time. Any other workplace challenges? I think for some women, if they are entrepreneurs or they work from home, one of the challenges is getting that face-to-face connection, having those friendships, having those social circles, and creating meaningful relationships. So you might see more of that. And as we get to talk to more millennials, that's something that they really are looking for in the association, the social aspects, the networking piece. Other workplace challenges we might hear about.
I think there are some challenges now post-COVID that did not exist before. the sense of, like you said, about connection and where do I work and what do I desire. I think there's a lot of elements of what am I willing to do and what am I not willing to do. So I think a lot of it is that I call it the golden handcuffs. You're in the job you hate, but it pays you well, or you feel content, you're okay with it, and it suffices certain needs. But I think there's this new revival of, since COVID, since lockdown, of fulfillment in our jobs and being willing to either progress or sometimes break out and become an entrepreneur and break away and do things that will empower us versus doing what gets us by, even though it doesn't fulfill all of our personal needs or financial needs or mental health. So I think that is shifting a lot in the workplace as well.
Yes, absolutely. The other aspect that we haven't really discussed is that leadership development piece, that maybe either women are needing leadership development. They've heard it in their professional development plan when they've applied for jobs or applied for an increase in pay, that you need to get these particular skills to be qualified for the next level. And maybe it's just from a self-confidence perspective that they need development of their self-confidence as a leader so that they can effectively lead. So our ABWA programs, resources, and networking opportunities can help overcome all of these challenges that we talked about. So once we've already done our fact-finding mission with them, we can address again how ABWA meets the need of that particular person with different aspects of our membership, covering only the ones that are relevant to the conversation you're having with that individual. If they're not going to school and not thinking about going back to school, talking to them about the potential to get outright grants for school is irrelevant right now. We can promote those opportunities for their family members later. Let's focus on the things that are immediately relevant to their particular situation. And sometimes their story may resonate with something that someone that you know that has had a similar experience and have changed the dynamic of that situation through ABWA. So when we're sharing, sometimes the stories that we share don't even have to be personal stories. We can share stories of other ABWA members that have overcome or had some success story. So the more you talk to ABWA members and get to know them and the value that they've gotten out of ABWA, you discover their story, then that's another tool you have in your toolkit to use as an example. Oh, I know my friend Kim, she changed careers and she moved to a new town and was really struggling. And she found that ABWA was really an opportunity for her to create a new Kim. And I think it could do the same for you. So it doesn't have to be your story. It's okay to share other people's stories that they've shared with you in allowing people to experience the power of ABWA. So we've already done our brainstorm. The key is the what's in it for me. So if you're talking to someone, that woof them, if you are telling them something and that it's kind of like that, so what? Why do they care? If you haven't matched up the benefit of joining with the specific things that you found out in the initial discovery, the answer is kind of going to be so what? And you're going to encounter objections when you go to ask them to join the association because you haven't identified the value. If they don't see the what's in it for me. And it's like, oh, that's nice. So what? Why do I care? You haven't explained the value of those benefits. So you have to be able to address the what's in it for them and outline the specific benefits and value of ABWA, like the professional development, the networking, the mentorship, the leadership opportunities. And address that question specifically by showing how ABWA can help them achieve those personal and professional goals. You can use real life examples, again, of individuals who you personally know whose lives and careers have changed for the better because of their ABWA membership. Again, this involves you getting to know other ABWA members and finding out what their story is so that you have more tools in your toolkit. It's important to create that relationship with this prospective member, or in some cases, this is our client or customer. So we want to apply the principles of storytelling to our interactions with them. Share relatable anecdotes and experiences. And sometimes as you practice or you think about how you would tell a story, you can record yourself telling a story about one of your ABWA experiences and listen to it and go back. There may be parts of the story that are irrelevant to the purpose of the story. Extra details that you've added in that can be removed so that you're really focusing in and you're not diluting the message. If you give too many details, you're kind of diluting the message, and your potential member is going to get confused. We also want to make sure we're building rapport. Again, that feel, felt, found method works great. Share experiences that you have that link closely or align closely to what they've told you in your discovery. So in terms of sharing our story, we don't have time to do the sharing actually today. And we have already shared little nuggets of our story. So I would challenge you to go back and refine those nuggets, make your list of ABWA stories that relate to all elements of the mission statement, the personal and professional development through leadership, education, networking, and recognition. So focus your story, see if you can come up with a story for each of those elements, and also the sisterhood piece, because that's an important key. So that when you're talking to someone and you can tell them about the different things that we offer in ABWA, you have stories that you've kind of thought about already that you can pull out and share with them. And you'll be ready to discuss them and really make them relevant to that particular person's experience. So what about the next step? The first part we've taught, we're right here in the nurturing step 2, nurturing stage. The capture is the initial volley. That was your elevator pitch. Step 2 in the membership funnel is nurturing the lead. That's what you're doing when you're sharing this story. The next step is to convert them to a member. And then the last step, that little nugget at the bottom, that's a partner. That's when they start sharing their story and telling other people about ABWA. So closing the membership, we want to transition from our stories to inviting them to take action. So once you've talked to them about the story and how it ties in, you could ask them a question like, do you see how an organization like this would really benefit some of the things that you've talked about that you need? I would love to have you come to a meeting as a guest. And so my primary league offers a free Zoom attendance for first-time guests. So that's one of the ways that I'm asking for the commitment to come to the next event. And I'll know upfront already before I go into the meeting, the coffee, the social, the getting to know you. I'll know what the topic is for next month's meeting. I'll know the date of that because I'm going to invite them at the end. I tell them, I would love for you to see firsthand some of the benefits that I'm talking about and be my guest at the next event, which is actually on Monday. And so you tell them about the event and get their commitment to attend, because that's a lot of times that's the next step that's going to be required. Most people are not going to join just based on your conversation. They are going to want to experience it firsthand by attending one of the ABWA events. So the commitment is the commitment to attend. So you can help them with the registration and share the link. But sometimes they're going to have objections and hesitations. What are some of the objections or hesitations that you might encounter when you invite someone to join ABWA?
I'm so busy, I don't have the time.
I totally understand. I always say that if you want something done, you ask a busy person to do it. I have a totally full schedule. We only have programs once a month for 2 hours. And if you can't make it because you have a busy schedule that month or you're out of town, you just come back when you can the following month. So that would be how I would address that particular objection. What other objections?
I don't have the money.
I can totally understand that. We actually have payment plans available that we could set up through our league for your membership, so you can pay throughout the course of the year. And we do have very affordable options. Our Zoom doesn't include a meal, so you could attend those for as little as $15 a meeting. What else?
I have kids and family. I can't, that time is just awkward for me.
I can totally understand that. As a mom of 4 boys, I have experienced that, trying to juggle schedules and my husband being busy, trying to make sure kids get to sporting events and whatnot. And actually, my kids have attended conferences and events with ABWA. But one of the great things about our league is that we do offer a Zoom program. So if you have football practice, you grab your phone and you log in and you put your headset in, and you could attend right from the football practice and make the most of that time.
I'm in too many things.
So looking at your schedule, would you find time to do something that was going to benefit you in the long run in terms of your personal and professional growth, networking, leadership development? So that one is a little bit trickier because you have to clarify what it is that's taking all of their time. One of the other issues with time, you could also point out that the programs are only 2 hours a month. And even our professional development through our on-demand library is on-demand learning. So I'm taking a course right now. I listen to programs on my phone while I'm driving in the car, and you don't even have to finish the whole lesson. You can do part of the modules and then come back to it. So it's very flexible for busy people.
I know one that I get a lot.
Yeah.
You already have some other people that I know in the area who do what I do.
ABWA is not like a BNI networking group that you can only have one person in an organization. We are really about supporting one another in our businesses, and really sky's the limit with ABWA, because you can attend ABWA meetings all over the country, in Houston, in North Carolina, in Washington, DC, and you can expand your network. So you're not limited to your supportive network to just our local area. What else? Something that I encounter is, well, I don't have my own business. Well, we all know that that's a clarification of that ABWA has women of all occupations. We have diverse industries and roles. Some of us have our own businesses, some work for other people. We even have retired members and student members. And so you're not necessarily pigeonholed to a specific industry or a specific role in your organization to be a member.
I'm retired and don't have a business. I've gotten that. So I can't come because you're a businesswoman and I'm retired and don't have a business.
You don't have to own a business to be a member of ABWA. As someone who previously worked, you have a lot to offer as a mentor to other women. It's also a great opportunity to have social interaction, give back to the community through community service, and just get out of the house and have some fun.
That's good.
Other objections that you can think of that we could talk about? The important thing to know is that you should kind of have an idea. We've talked through some of these objections are just tonight, but there are certainly other ones that maybe we haven't come across or discussed, and being able to respond to those, because if they have an objection and you don't satisfactorily respond to that, they're not going to join the association. So you have to keep clarifying and getting confirmation. And again, after you clarify the objection, what do you think? Why don't you just come and check it out? Come to one meeting as my guest. This is going to be a great program, and there's certainly no obligation to become a member on your first visit.
What I also like, if I could point out, what I love that you're doing is the first thing you do is make sure they are heard and acknowledging their objection and making it okay that they have that, and then qualifying that this is something that many people have, and then giving them a solution to it. It may not be their solution, but you're offering them some other ideas. But the most important thing from what you're doing is you're really hearing them and acknowledging and not diminishing their objection.
Absolutely. Now, you do have some other resources that you could use also in this closed process as part of the invitation. You could show them things on the national website, things that are on the front part, not the member only piece. You don't need to go back in the back, and you can tell them that there's other things if it's relevant, but you can show them the website. You can provide them your local league membership brochure. You can have them connect with the Facebook or Instagram page or your league's Eventbrite so that they get notifications about upcoming events. You can ask them if you can add them to your league's newsletter so that they get notifications in their email when there's new events or special happenings. We have the What's in It for Me one-page sheet that the ambassadors created. You could provide that. You can give them a link to the Achieve newsletter, which has great articles networking pieces or recognition pieces, all kinds of information, or if you have printed copies of that, you could do that as well. So you do have some support things that you can also link them to as well. For example, even on my YouTube channel, I have videos from top 10 speeches. So you could provide something like that. There are stories. Those women told stories on stage. And if you know the stories, you could speak to them to view a specific video, or you could just say, oh, here are some of the women that were recognized this year, and they have some amazing stories. You should check it out. So I thank you for all of your participation tonight. I hope you got a lot out of tonight's session. Do you have any questions at this point?
I do. First of all, what an amazing program you have here. I hope this grows and reaches a lot of people, because there's so much goal and there's so much that you bring to the table. And I hope that this is just a beginning that people can see, and then you can do it again with massive. So I consider myself very fortunate tonight to have this private moment with you. It's almost like having a little private coaching worth hundreds of dollars or thousands of dollars, probably.
I promise I won't send you a bill. It's free
Yeah.
tonight.
Well, for me, I'm not a doctor, so hundreds of dollars. For you, you can charge more. The one thing I would ask is, there's the little challenge you have. Can we talk about that?
Yes. So I am encouraging members to create their story, their ABWA story. Now, it's a little bit different than some of the parts that we talked about, because it's going to be a one-sided story talking about why you join ABWA and maybe some of the benefits, hitting on some of those stories that you would share with a prospective member, either sharing it in a written form with some pictures or a video of you telling the story and posting it on social media. And the purpose of this is to get the word out about ABWA and to create a repository of amazing and different and diverse ABWA stories and experiences that members have had all over the country. So if I have someone that I'm talking to that is an introvert, and maybe Christina talks about that in her story, maybe I want to send that story to that person, a link to that social media story. I want to get the word out about all the different experiences that our members are having. And we're going to do a contest for the ones that have the biggest reach are going to get a $25 gift card at conference. So I encourage you to utilize what we talked about today, identifying parts of your story that are impactful and are unique to you, and share those in a short video or a post with some photos, and tag me and tag Discover Your Story. And I would love to see those on social media so I can continue to share those with other people. As you refine your story, it's important to practice, figure out which parts resonate with people. And if you share your story with someone and they say, oh, this part was really where you got me and drew me in, those are the parts that you want to make sure that you are sharing in your conversations with other people. Remember to be a good listener when you're talking with prospective members at that coffee or lunch. And don't be afraid to be vulnerable and share your story. Thank you, everyone, for joining us tonight. And I look forward to seeing those stories on social media.